9 in 10 tourists traveling to Uganda are cancelling their trips because of unfavorable policies. Now, this is according to the tour and travel company operators. They have now called on government to adjust the policies because the sector is suffering. Eve Masawi has more.
For 4 years now, tourism has been Uganda's #1 foreign exchange earner, raking in over $1.6 billion every year. But because of the COVID-19 pandemic, many sectors, including tourism sector, have been greatly affected. To make matters worse, Uganda is on the red list of its major source of income, which is United Kingdom. Now, according to tour operators in Uganda, 9 out of 10 travelers are cancelling their trips to Uganda, opting to go to countries with favorable conditions.
Now, the challenge is that the people who make decisions and talk about these airports, leaders, some of the leaders, they have no single understanding of what actually is happening. They have no interest in making sure that whatever they're talking about is actually effective. And that's our biggest challenge as an industry. As we speak right now, I think almost 90% of the tourists are cancelling coming to Uganda and are going elsewhere.
Amos Wekesa, a tour operator and the founder of Great Lake Safaris, says poor handling of tourists is creating a bad image for Uganda and the tourism sector.
On 23rd of August at 7:45, Uganda Airlines arrived from Nairobi. All these guys were ferried to a beach. They were taken samples, and you can do this investigation, it's true. They were all given positives. They all protested and said, we tested in Kenya before we came. Can you give us an alternative lab? When they gave them an alternative lab, all of them came out negative. But they had gone through paying $65. They had gone through paying an extra $65. That's $130. Now unrefunded their money. And those guys are within us, within the country. So that already brings very negative image to a country.
Boniface Byamukama, Vice Chairman, Uganda Hotel Owner Association, disagrees with the idea of tourists paying the $30 charge in the bank, saying it's not practical.
Do you know what the government said yesterday? They said for those costs, for those who want to do the test of the cost at $30, you must pay through the bank. Is this bank online? No. Has the bank been pronounced? Yes? No.
Inasmuch as Uganda is trying to protect its citizens from being infected by COVID-19 by imposing COVID-19 tests to travelers coming into the country has put more focus on Entebbe Airport, ignoring Kenyan borders and South Sudan, which are high-risk entry points. According to tour operators, tourists coming in the country with proof of vaccination and negative tests should be treated with a bit of decency.
There have been two challenges that would have easily stopped me from coming. If I've decided to come to your country, I'll look at the ways, the easiness with which I can get my visa. If it is hard to get a visa to your country, I won't come. To reduce my chances. Number two, if I'm going to connect through different airports, spend so many hours traveling to your country, it also reduces the chances of me coming to your country.
We had the categories, and with this test we secured that the tourists are actually okay, and so that was enough what was there before. So we are wondering, why do they make things difficult now? And also, can't somebody see that we're all struggling? It's not only the tourism sector, he's right, everyone is there.
Can we allow these people who are fully vaccinated and they have their test before departure be allowed in as other countries are doing?
Although Winston Churchill, one of the country's earliest tourists in 1907, dubbed Uganda the Pearl of Africa for its beauty and wildlife, believed that Ugandan authorities at least amend their policies if the country is to live up to the B-Link. Eve Masawi for CTV, PM Edition.
To discuss this further, we are joined by a tour and travel enthusiast, Amos Wekesa. He shares his thoughts on the new travel policies with our reporter on ground, Eve Masawi. Over to you, Eve.
Thank you so much, Melissa Mboha. Tonight we're joined by Amos Wekesa, a tour operator, but also founder of Great Lake Safaris. He's also very vocal in this particular field of tourism. Welcome to CTV PM Edition.
Thank you so much.
So, Wekesa, we need to know, how has COVID-19 affected the tourism sector amidst this pandemic?
Yeah, first of all, of course,
our expectations in 2019 was that tourism was going to grow much faster than we had previous years. We started hearing of rumors of COVID towards the end of 2019. February became very apparent that we're facing a challenge at hand. We had very little fears because we did not know how far this was going to go. So we thought probably by March or April a solution would be found. But I must say that we have had close to 18 months of no business for the tourism industry. So quite a number of young operators have closed offices, but also lots of hotels, as I speak, are up for grabs, for sale. People don't have money to pay loans. It's been extremely very difficult time for the tourism industry. It's also not been helped by the fact that we are not extremely very good communicators as a country. We have no particular interest in actually promoting the country, and that has affected the general outlook of the total tourism industry.
Okay, we understand that the tour operators came out to decry the new policies put in place. How is this going to impact the tourism sector?
Well, we must first of all be very clear that the tourism industry is not necessarily against the precautions that the government is putting in place. However, Uganda is not working in isolation as a country. We are competing in the business world, worldwide. And a lot of the tourists were already burdened by the conditions that were there previously, but they were happy to do them. You know, first of all, anyone who was coming to Uganda with double jab of COVID, and then with a test, with the results, PCR tests of at least 72 hours, was allowed in the country, especially if they had a tourism visa, but traveling with a particular tour operator and a particular itinerary, were allowed to enter the country without having to go through another test. Remember that UK, which is our #1 source market, is no longer a source market for us because we are on the red list as Uganda, which means that the target is now the US and a bit of the Germans. So if I have traveled 32 hours, 40 hours to come to Uganda, I arrive with KLM maybe in the night, and taking me to certain beach in the night and poking some testing equipment down my throat and waiting for 6 hours in the cold, no one is interested in that. No one can come to your country. The reality is that even me here as the MOC, if I want to go to Kenya and I test 72 hours before I go to Kenya, within 72 hours before I go to Kenya, I am allowed to enter Kenya. But when I'm coming back, I also take a test in Kenya before I come back to Uganda. And I think that has helped. And we are seeing a bit of focus, a lot of focus on the airports and not a focus internally, no focus at the borders, you know. And it's because the people going through the airport are able to pay. Now, we're saying that, yes, the guys of the testing centers want to make money, but the tourism industry must also try to make money. So you know that this country would not have any business outside Uganda. You know, 4 Kenyan banks operate here, insurance companies. South Africa has 78 different companies operating in this country, taking money. They have not closed during this particular time. Us who have nothing are trying to put in conditions that are making sure that business does not continue. And so thriving, we cannot thrive on loans as a country. We can survive on business. But the other thing that is also very key for us to note is that whereas we're struggling to try and keep the young people employed in the tourism industry, of course, government is still expecting us to pay as you earn, pay NSSF. I am paying that. It's hard. You're trying, first of all, to survive within this particular time, and it's happened for the last 18 months. Now, you keep asking yourself, so if government wants NSSF, they want payee, where do they expect us to be getting the money from? It's a hard time already in its own.
Based on what you've just shared with us, the conditions are definitely not favorable for the tourists coming into the country. How many trips have so far been cancelled?
Well, the moment Ministry of Health announced, prematurely, I must say, because the airport guys were not aware, no one else was aware about their conditions. We had about 9 out of 10 people cancel their trips and going to countries like Kenya, Namibia, which has opened up, South Africa, which has better conditions. And I must also tell you that Ugandans must know that Entebbe is an entry point for Uganda. It's a face of a country. But I must also say that the most chaotic airport right now in Africa is actually Entebbe Airport, which is very sad. If you consider the amount of efforts we put into market this country as tour operators, we go out there in the winters and push the image of this country, trying to get business, because you see, business of tour operators is not just for the tour operators. It is for the whole country. Tourists eat food. Tourists go to petrol stations. Tourists go to restaurants. Tourists go support every other sector, agriculture, manufacturing. They go shopping malls. And so tourism is everybody's business. And so if the tour operators don't function, lots of other sectors don't function.
Well, those are the words of Amos Wekesa, and of course, in regards with the COVID-19 situation in the tourism sector. Back to you, Melissa Mboha.
Thank you, Eve, for that. Well, you heard it from one of the tourist and travel operators, that is Mr. Amos Wekesa. It definitely is unfortunate to see what the tourism sector is going through.